another video. It's not really a daily dose, but you can use it for when you're reading the Bible. And this is just my interpretation of it, and I wanted to share. If you guys think that I have it wrong or whatever, if I'm a little off, please let me know. Again, this is just what, as I was doing some research this morning in my Bible study, and you know how I said that I was doing a study on living by the Spirit. Hold on, y'all. I got a parent coming in. I'm trying to hurry up so that, hey, y'all. Good morning. Thank you. I'm just trying to hurry up before this happened. But anyway, so I wanted to share it with you guys, but I also wanted to share it with my goddaughter. So that's why I am in the building today. Out living by the Spirit, and how you know that you're living by the Spirit, because ultimately you're living a life of prosperity and peace and joy and all these things. Well, in order to get all that, you know that to live by the Spirit is to obey God's commands, decrees, and all those good things. And when you do, you're living holy. You'll be living a separate life from the way the world lives. So today, and have you ever noticed like this? Like, have you ever noticed like sometimes you're reading and it say if you obey God's commands, but then sometimes it say if you obey God's decrees or his regulations. It don't, sometimes it don't say all three of them. Sometimes it just say like one, like if you just obey God's commands, this will happen. But if you obey like his decrees, his, it'll say like decrees, regulations, and commands on some of them. Um, so on one of them, it said that on today, if you choose to obey God's commands, you will be his people, or something to that effect. Like, I don't have the scriptures before me, so I can't really say it like word for word, like verbatim or whatever. But it was like, if you obey God's commands, these things will be done for you. Like, you will live this, and the world will know that you're holy, that you're a people for God, right? And that you would prosper, and you would be praised and all this stuff. And so I'm wondering, okay, it's like if you obey God's commands. And then so later on I flipped to some more scriptures, but then it started listing commands, decrees, and regulations. And if you did God's commands, decrees, and regulations, then this would happen. Even though it is prosperity, even though you're still living in prosperity and good things were happening, it was like it was different. Like what would be said about you or whatever. Like if you did all of them, then all the nations will stand in awe of you and you'll be famous and all these good things, right? If you obey the decrees, the laws, and commands, or something to that effect. So I started thinking, why is it sometimes just decrees? I mean, or commands, and then sometimes it's decrees and regulations. So I kind of just did a study on it, or real quick, I looked it up. And so God's commands is the 10 commandments. God's commands is for everybody, is for everyone. And then God's decrees is those things of his promises. So those are the his principles for the promise. So if you pay your tithe, or if you give or something like that, it'll be given back to you, pressed down, shaken together, running over, back in good measures. Or if you pay your tithe, then he'll open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you won't have room to receive. So those are the decrees. The decrees are, if it's the gosh, it's the promise, but it's the can't think of it, y'all, just that fast. I think I'm just getting jitteries about it. But it's it's what he used those promises, or to fulfill those promises. It's the obligations, that your obligations in order to receive God's promises. So those are the things that, if those are God's decrees. So I decree that you'll be blessed, but you can only be blessed if you do these things. So those are the decrees, right? Did that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was going to ask what was the difference. Okay.
And then, so regulations, on the other hand, is the things that is more in detailed on how you fulfill the 10 Commandments. So, like, but it's for that individual person, if that makes sense. So, like, um, it's like God's salvation, for it's what God wants, how God wants you to live. But it will fulfill the 10 Commandments. It'll stay in the guidelines of the 10 Commandments. It's how you fulfill the 10 Commandments. I hope this is making sense. Like, it's so hard to explain. I wish I would have brought my notes. Um, so like saying honoring your mother and your father so that your days may be long, right? That's a commandment that God has for everybody. Everybody has to honor their mother and their father so that their days can be long, right? So with that, how I honor my mother and my father is different from how you may honor your mother and your father, which is a regulation or a stipulation that God has put on me, on my life, versus putting it on your life. So whereas if my mother and my father is so against the gospel, is so against um my God, then even though I will honor them, which is I will respect them, but it wouldn't be one of those things where I needed to go every time they call me or every time that they needed something. You do that make sense? Like, me honoring my mother or my father may be that I don't listen to everything they tell me to do. Even though I respect them, but I don't listen to everything that they tell me to do, because what they're telling me to do don't line up with God and what God is telling me to do. So that would be a stipulation on me. Or even like how some people say, you can't play cards, you can't play cards. So that's a stipulation that God put on you, not put on me. I can play cards, I can play Uno. You might can't play Uno because back in the days, you when you wasn't saved, playing Uno was a trigger for you for anger, was a trigger for you for drinking, for whatever, for partying, and would get you out of God's character, which ultimately that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's the expression of God's love. Living by God's regulations is expression, is the expression of God's love. So a way that we express God's love. Sometimes it's not giving people what they want. Sometimes it's tough love. Sometimes, like this child, I can't just always hug and baby. That's a regulation that is put on that child, or my love for this child, because um if I baby them, then they're gonna be more needy, and it'll cause them later in life to always want, and when they don't get it, then they'll go out into a rage or go out into a fit or do things that is not lawfully to get what they want, because they're so used to and accustomed to getting what they want. Did that make sense? I hope this is making sense to y'all. Like, so regulations, God's regulations is just pretty much for each individual person on how God wants you to fulfill the 10 Commandments. God's commands is the 10 Commandments. And then God's decrees is the well, I don't know why I keep going to blank every time I get this there. It's God's promises. It's how God fulfilled his promises. So it's the principle for you to receive God's promises. So the principles, the stipulations, or the guidelines on how to receive certain promises of God. And those are the decrees. So I hope that blessed y'all. It did for me. So it's a better understanding for me. So when I'm reading the scriptures and it says, you need to obey God's commands, then this is what it means. When it says obey God's regulations and decrees, or if it just say obey the decrees that I'm giving you, then you'll know that those decrees are, I will bless you if you obey my decree. Like those things, if you go by the principle. So God says he reign on the just and the unjust, right? So it's because they're going by the principles. It doesn't, not people's life they don't have to live completely holy, or people don't have to be saved in order to live by God's decrees, to receive the promises. It's just something that is natural, that is normal. It's just something that God has done to regulate earth and how he rules in earth. These are the things, if you do these certain things in earth, this will automatically happen for people because you're following the decree. If you be nice to people, they'll be nice to you for the better half. Let's just use that for an example. That's a decree. Like that thing will happen for everybody if you do it. If you follow that, it'll happen for everybody. Regardless if you're saved or not. That's how come you're wondering, how come these unsaved people are getting these things and doing these things? It's because they're living by the decrees, the standards that God has placed in the earth on how you are to reap or receive. Because that's something that he has put in everybody. So I really hope this has blessed you. And we have more and more parents coming in. So I have to go. I love you. Until next time. Bye-bye.